Hey y'all, Lisa Davis here, the trusted banker, and I am excited to talk to y'all today. I know it's been a minute, but hey, let's get into it. So today I want to talk about Wells Fargo because they got a lot going on, and it's Black History Month, so I thought I'd throw a little bit of Black history in there as far as how it comes to play together with the financial industry, and how the financial industry kind of got started. So let's talk about it, right? So today we're going to talk about Wells Fargo because they just got rid of their fourth consent order. So they just shed their fourth consent order in the month. This last month, they've shed four of them. They've gotten rid of four consent orders. Um, I'm wondering, did they meet the requirements or did they find some leniency with this new administration? We will find out as this continues to go because guess what? They still have five more consent orders to get rid of. So I will explain to you what a consent order is, but it's just interesting that Wells Fargo has gotten rid of four of them in the last month and they've got five more to get rid of. So let's talk about Wells Fargo because Wells Fargo seems to be one of those banks that just is not a bank for the people, which is why they keep getting those consent orders. Um, they don't do the right things, and we're going to go over some of the things that they've done in the past. But first, I do want to do a little bit of history, right? I want to talk about the financial industries and how they can trace themselves back to the origins of slavery and how they directly profited from slavery. I think this is something that always needs to be discussed, especially in Black History Month, because people just don't know how the banking industry really got started and why some people just still don't have an affinity to banks. Might be genetic, might be something in our DNA that makes us not really trust these places because the forced labor of enslaved people generated immense wealth that fueled the industrialization, banking, and economic expansion in this country. So Wall Street itself was built off of slavery. Banks used enslaved people as collateral for loans, financing the expansions of many plantations, and many major banks like Wachovia, that is now Wells Fargo, either directly profited from slavery or acquired the banks that did profit from slavery. So Wachovia, I remember Wachovia because it was still around when I entered into the banking industry, and they were still doing bad deals. Um, they date back to the 19th century or around 1810 in places like Louisiana, and they issued credit to plantation owners, effectively financing the purchase of enslaved people. And of course, I do have some, let's see, I have some visuals. So this is like pictures of what the slave trade looked like back in the day. And I have some visuals around why people needed to finance slaves when they were doing the financing. So, these are some of the pictures, but let's talk about why people had to be financed because the prices were going up. Right? Slaves were not as cheap as they were. Plantations were growing by acreage, and slaves were being sold now for not $10, not for $100, but they were $1,400. And in some records, you can see that people were going out and buying maybe 50 to 100 slaves at a time or more, and this got very costly. And so this is now how the banking industry got spurred because people could not afford to buy all the collateral material that they needed or slaves that they needed in order to get their cotton picked or whatever they were trying to build or whatever they were trying to do back in the day. And so the government stepped in, government subsidized, okay? Let's be clear. The government stepped in and issued, through the banking industry, government issued credit. So slave owners could purchase the amount of slaves that they needed in order to get the work done that they were trying to get done. So I just want to mention that because I think it's very important for us to understand our history. And so as you can see here on this slide, how the economy started to grow and how plantations produced lots of monies for the people that owned slaves and plantations and, whatever crops or whatever they were doing back there. And this is pretty much how the economy grew. I think it's important to talk about at all times. So I just wanted to bring that little tidbit up. It is Black History Month. Welcome. Happy Black History Month. So, Wachovia is no longer around. They did get bought by Wells Fargo. And in the mid 2000s, they did apologize, issued a public apology to, say that, hey, we're sorry. We know how we started, and, we're sorry, and issue a public apology, whatever. But that doesn't erase the history overnight. And now for many, the past, it seems to still be showing up in our now, because big banks have repeatedly shown they prioritize wealth and profit over everyday people, especially African Americans, who face discrimination and then continue to face it even now. So we have, I thought this was extremely funny. Let me see if I can. Huffington Post, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they put out this article a couple of years ago, and the title is just like, I feel them. I feel that because I'm, as a banker for over 25 years, Wells Fargo has just not been the best banker. It's just not been the best bank partner. They just haven't. And so I feel them. I feel this. This came out in 2018 after yet another consent order. But like they put it bluntly, like Wells Fargo executives know that everybody hates them. And in previous years, this bank, when they were trying to rebrand themselves at this point, I mean, look at their logo. Look at the logo. What is this? What, right? So in previous years, the bank has tried to launch multiple marketing campaigns to hope to clean up its public image, only to see each effort thwarted by fresh scandals like wrongly repossessing 27,000 cars and foreclosing on 400 families for no reason. The bank dedicated more than 2,000 words to build additional efforts of retrust, to rebuild their trust. They added an additional 2,000 words into an article of an apology. Even though they did things like bad mortgage lending, bad automobile lending, consumer deposit account freezing, and so on and so forth. It's just the list is nonstop, and this has been going on for at least the last 20 years. Again, they just got out of 4 consent orders. They've got 5 more that they've got to maintain, and we're going to go over what consent orders are. But no, I feel like Wells Fargo is not that great of a partner. I never recommend anybody go to that bank. Let's look here. So let's talk about the 10 major consent orders and the billions of dollars that Wells Fargo has had to pay back. Remember, they're still open. They're still open for business, and they just got rid of another consent order. So in 2011, they got in trouble for foreclosing and improper documentation. That cost them $1.2 billion. In 2011, again, the Federal Reserve Board found that they were doing unsafe and unsound servicing practices. And so they had primarily covered by the same settlement package, but no separate large penalty was given. It's just that they found that they weren't even disclosing the right information at the time of letting people know that they were going to go in and change their servicing so people would know where to manage and make their next payment. In 2013, they did potentially unlawful foreclosure actions requiring independent reviews. The bank provided hundreds of millions in compensation to affected homeowners, though it wasn't labeled as a separate civil monetary penalty. And in 2015, they had bad compliance and anti-money laundering rules, and they had their fine and settlement was corrective action rather than imposing a big standalone penalty. Remediation costs likely ran into the millions, but no headline, no civil money penalty was widely reported. Let me go in here. 2016, they had to pay back $185 million because they failed compliance and they opened unauthorized accounts for people. This is that one in 2016 when they opened up tons of accounts and people's names, and they were all fake accounts. 2016, another one for student loan servicing. The settlement was $4 million plus a $400,000 penalty. 2018, auto lending and mortgage rate lock order penalties because they did improper fee assessments on auto loans and interest rate lock extensions. They had to pay back $1 billion and $500 million to the OCC. And in 2018, again, continued failing in the sales practices, posting fake accounts and scandal. So they also encompassed another $1 billion above the $1 billion that they already had been fined. In 2019, charging customers unfair or erroneous fees for rate lock extensions, settled largely under the prior $1 billion framework. Wells Fargo did not learn their lesson, and they had a separate penalty assessed to that one. And in 2020, ongoing deficiencies in anti-money laundering compliance and risk management, and they were assessed a $400 million civil penalty enterprise-wide for compliance and operational risk management. So it's like, I don't like Wells Fargo, and I'll tell people all the time that this is not really a bank for the people. It's just not. It's just not. It's not a bank for the people. So today they announced they got rid of their fourth consent order. So a consent order is when a bank is out of compliance and the regulatory agencies like the OCC, Federal Reserve, and the CFPB step in and they say, hey, you're not servicing the public correctly. You're putting them at risk. You're doing fraud. You've opened up all these accounts fraudulently. So it goes to the Department of Justice and they end up settling out of court, meaning that they don't want to go through the whole court process, so they get a settlement agreement. And in the settlement agreement, the consent order states how much money they need to pay back to make either the families or the people that they did wrong whole, and what are they going to do for the communities, and how much are they going to pay back to the regulatory agencies, as far as the regulatory agencies have some funds set aside for people that are not, for people that have had complaints and they need to file for judgments or whatever. So all in all, Wells Fargo has paid well over $3 billion in penalties and fines. And that is just not normal. It's just not normal. It's like, and I do know some banks do this. Some banks would rather pay the fine and do the dirt because they can afford the fine. Does that make sense? So they'd rather pay the fine because the dirt will get them. I remember when they did all those fake account openings in 2016, they did that for the investors. They did it for the dividends. They did it for the stock prices, and they did it for the bonuses. They had a goal that they had to open up a lot of accounts to show growth in the company. And so they opened up all these accounts in their customers' names without customer knowledge. And so they committed fraud by opening up accounts that had no monies in them, just open accounts, because that was a goal. They hit those goals. Investors were happy. The stock price went up. Shareholders got their dividends. People got their bonuses. Managers got their bonuses. And people, their customers, unbeknownst to them, had fake accounts opened in their names using their private information. And they got fined $1 billion. That $1 billion was probably less than what they made off of expanding the growth of their company. So Wells Fargo has always just been raggedy to me. I don't care for Wells Fargo. So in favor of Black History Month, I just want to call a thing a thing. Wells Fargo to me is not a bank for the people. Wells Fargo to me is not a bank where I feel like, especially African American people, need to be banking. It's just not that type of bank for us. They came about right around the time of the slave trade. The bank that they brought in was one of those banks. The banking system came about because of the slave trade, because of the funding that the government wanted to subsidize for slave owners and help them build out their profitability during that time around 1810, all during the slave trade. So I think it's important for people to know. I think it's important when you're trying to choose a bank to know what kind of bank that you're trying to choose. You know, today, community leaders, we demand more. We demand more than vague apologies and big PR campaigns. I'm interested to see what these next 5 consent orders that Wells Fargo has. That means they have 5 more things that they did that broke regulation that they decided they were going to do and just pay the fine. And I'm interested to know what they are. So yes, 10 consent orders are terminated, but that doesn't wipe out the bank's track record. Wells Fargo remains under a Federal Reserve asset cap. That means that because they've done so much damage, they've done so much bad banking, they are not allowed to grow their bank. So they're under an asset cap, meaning the Federal Reserve says you're not able to have any more branches. You're not able to bring in any more new customers, any more billions of dollars. We're going to limit you in the amount of monies that you can make until you make good in communities that you serve to all people, not just the rich, not just the wealthy, but all people. So they've limited them for now until probably they get out of the rest of these consent orders that they're in. I'm gonna keep watching Wells Fargo. I've been watching them since I got into the banking industry. I don't care for them, and so yeah, this is not new. This is not this is right in their wheelhouse. This is what they do. So that's Wells Fargo. My name is Lisa Davis. I am the trusted banker, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.